So, for what feels like forever, the smartphone world has really only been about two names: Apple's iOS and Google's Android, right? But what if a tech giant, fueled by, well, national ambition, just decided to tear up the rulebook and build a third option completely from scratch? Well, that's exactly what Huawei is doing with HarmonyOS 5. And let me tell you, it's a move that could shake up the entire mobile landscape. And really, this is the billion-dollar question, isn't it? Breaking into a market that's established is a massive, massive undertaking. I mean, it's not just about building good software. You have to convince millions of users and, just as importantly, developers to leave behind these ecosystems they've known for years. So, is this a bold new chapter for smartphones, or is it a costly gamble that's just going to be confined to one market? Let's dig in. Okay, so here is the most critical thing you need to get about this. HarmonyOS 5, which is also called HarmonyOS Next, is a complete and total divorce from Android. You see, the previous versions were kind of built on top of Android's open source code. This one, it contains 0 lines of it, none. And that means the millions of Android apps we all use every single day, they're just not compatible. This isn't some simple software update. Huawei has literally rebuilt its digital house from the foundation up.
So why? Why take such a huge risk? To really understand that, we have to look back a little bit, because this wasn't some sudden decision. Nope, it was a very calculated strategy, years in the making, and it was born from some pretty immense external pressure. This timeline really shows a clear, deliberate pivot. For 5 years, Huawei used Android's foundation for its early HarmonyOS versions. You can think of it like they were learning with training wheels on. But then, in late 2023, they announced the training wheels were coming off. And just a year later, bam, the Mate 70 shipped with a pure-blood HarmonyOS. That was the point of no return. And you know, this isn't just about what's on your phone screen. This is about geopolitics. The whole move is being framed as a declaration of technological sovereignty. As this quote from the newspaper Takangpao suggests, for a lot of observers in China, HarmonyOS is a direct challenge to what they see as a long-standing U.S. monopoly in critical software. All right, so if you're divorcing Android, you can't just leave, right? You have to replace it with something. And Huawei had to build an entirely new technological core basically from scratch. So at the very heart of any OS is what's called its kernel. It's the absolute core that manages everything. Android uses the Linux kernel, which is what we call monolithic. Think of it like a car where the engine, the transmission, and the wheels are all one giant inseparable block. Huawei's new kernel is a microkernel. It's more like modern Legos. Each piece is separate and self-contained. The theory is if one piece fails or gets attacked, it doesn't bring the whole system crashing down. So the goal is better security and better stability. But look, the kernel is just the foundation. On top of that, Huawei basically had to build everything else. A custom compiler to run the apps, a unique framework for the user interface, even its own programming languages. This isn't just swapping out one part of Android. It's a completely new, top-to-bottom ecosystem designed to replace the entire Android development world, the whole shebang. So, okay, the tech is brand new and built from the ground up. But does it actually make for a better phone? Let's stack up what Huawei promised against what early adopters are actually experiencing. So first up, the promise, the sales pitch. Huawei is positioning HarmonyOS 5 as a huge leap forward. Smarter, smoother, and way more secure. The core ideas here are deep, native AI integration and this idea of seamless connectivity between all your devices. And this is a really cool example of that smarter promise in action. The idea is so simple. You drag any piece of content, some text, a photo, a document, to the navigation bar, and the AI assistant, Celia, instantly analyzes it and offers help. It could be a summary, a search, a translation, whatever. The whole goal is to make AI feel less like a separate app you have to open and more like a built-in, intuitive part of the OS. And it's not just about AI. There's this really bold promise on speed. By controlling everything from the hardware chip all the way to the software code with its new Arc engine, Huawei claims a massive 30% performance boost. For you, the user, that should mean a noticeably faster and smoother experience. Okay, but that's the promise. The reality of launching a whole new ecosystem from scratch, well, it's always messy, isn't it? And early adopters are definitely discovering some significant growing pains. And this right here brings us to the single biggest challenge for HarmonyOS, what everyone is calling the app gap.
Now, major Chinese apps like WeChat and TikTok, they're available natively, no problem. But many global apps like Facebook and YouTube only work inside what's called an emulation container, which is basically a little bubble of Android running inside HarmonyOS. And then there's a whole other category, especially banking apps and Google services that just aren't available at all.
And, running apps inside that little Android bubble is, well, it's not a great experience. Users are reporting a whole host of problems. Notifications don't show up, apps run in a lower resolution, and basic stuff like transferring files can be a total nightmare. It's really just a workaround, not a solution. And this quote from a Tech column just really captures the frustration that people are feeling. Early adopters described disastrous issues, everything from broken features to, in some cases, actual data loss. And that's a stark reminder that swapping out an entire operating system is a much more dangerous process than a simple software update. So, we have this powerful new technology on one side and a pretty messy app situation on the other. What does all this mean for Huawei's big ambition to compete on the world stage? All right, so the early numbers are in. By the first quarter of 2025, HarmonyOS has managed to claw its way to 5% of the global market. Now, on one hand, that is impressive enough to make it the number 3 OS in the world. But on the other hand, it just shows you the sheer scale of the mountain it still has to climb. The Android and iOS giants, they still control the other 95%. And this analyst, Zhuo Weiyan, he really pinpoints the core problem for them going global. Developers are just so used to the vast, open Android ecosystem. So convincing them to invest time and money into a completely separate, closed ecosystem for a much smaller user base, that is an incredibly tough sell, especially when you get outside of China.
And so that brings us full circle, doesn't it? HarmonyOS was born from geopolitical necessity, this ambitious drive for self-reliance. And its technological achievement in such a short time is, frankly, undeniable. But the ultimate test, it isn't really about the code, is it? It's about conviction. Can Huawei convince the world's developers and users to bet on a third ecosystem, to break the gravity of the duopoly that has defined the smartphone for a generation? Well, that is a question that technology alone cannot answer.